gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, thanks a lot for taking a little time to check the video out. Much appreciated. And I got a really good late winter tip for you guys that's working right now, and it's going to work all the way through, probably the first part of March or something like that, maybe a little bit later, depending upon the lake you're in. And I'm going to talk about how to fish a blade bait for late winter bass. It's a really good technique. I figured this out a few years ago down at Table Rock, and I think it works in a lot of different lakes across the country, so we'll get into that. And real quick, guys, just a couple of daily housekeeping tips. I'd just like to invite everybody to please swing by, check out fishthemoment.com. We got all of our spring lake map breakdowns up on the site. We got lakes all over the country. Gives you 40 GPS waypoints. It's a good way to learn about any lake you need to learn more about, and we can also build you a personal breakdown, so you can check that out at fishthemoment.com. I'll put the link in the description. And also, we are gunning real hard to hit that 100,000 subscriber mark. Guys, we got a giant giveaway coming up at 100,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, I'd like to invite everybody to subscribe. And if you have subscribed and you want to help out, just share the channel with everybody, and hopefully we can get to that 100,000 mark. So thanks a lot for putting up with the plugs there. Much appreciated. Okay, guys, let's get into this a little bit. Actually, this is something that I'd been doing this a long time ago with spoons, but what I'm talking about today is this technique I'm going to tell you guys about with the blade bait. This is the Megabass Dyna-Response blade bait. Freaking awesome, guys. I'll include the Baitworks link in the description. Baitworks has got a ton of these up right now. You guys can get them there, but that's going to be the topic of today's video. But anyway, I started doing this technique years ago with a small spoon. I was taking like an 1/8 ounce jigging spoon, and what I figured out on Table Rock, and actually I've also caught them at Lake Hartwell and Lake Lanier doing the same technique, is in the late winter, a lot of these bass, they're starting to get into their pre-spawn mode. And what they do is they start to travel towards the back 2/3 part of the coves in the lake, in most lakes across the country. Doesn't matter if it's on the main lake or in the creeks. What these fish do is they sort of migrate down the coves and stage in there, getting ready to spawn later in April. But the staging activity that they have, it's two phases. There's some bass that will suspend and stage, and some bass will use the bottom. So what we're talking about here with the Dyna-Response blade bait is targeting these late winter suspended bass. Now, what you need to, first thing, there's a couple ingredients that you have to have before this works really good. You got to have some fairly clean water. And when I'm talking about clean, is you really need at least 3 foot of visibility. Ideally, 4 to 5 foot of visibility is really the best on that. The second element is that helps out, it's not necessary, is to having some type of submerged timber in the lake that you fish. That's another good factor. And the third factor is if you have a mixed species of a lake. If you've got a lake that has largemouth spotted bass and smallmouth in it, this is even better. And what I do with this technique is my favorite way to do it is I go back, I pick out 1 or 2 major creeks in the lake, and I go back into some of the larger coves off of these creeks, and I start idling right down the middle of these coves, and I start idling about 2/3 of the way back in the cove, usually when the water depth is anywhere between 30 to 60 feet deep. And once I get into that 30 to 60 foot zone, I'll shut the boat down. I'm not live scoping or side imaging or graphing or anything. I just, I found out that I can efficiently do this real quick with the blade bait. I'll get in the middle of those coves, 50 to 60 feet of water, and I go through the middle of this cove with the Dyna-Response, and I start pitching out in front of the boat, just like I was flipping and pitching bushes. I pitch out like, 20 or 30 feet, free spool line out, let it get almost all the way to the bottom almost, and just lift it up the bottom like I'm jigging a spoon. And if the bait is like on a 30 or 40 foot cast, I'll reel down to it and just pump it up like that, pump it up. And I try to work it anywhere between from the bottom to maybe 10 foot off the bottom. Now, what happens is a lot of these fish, they will either use the bottom or they will suspend in those particular I call them ditches. They're actually the middle of the coves. They tend to suspend more if you have timber in there, and they tend to be on the bottom more if you don't have timber. I remember, I'll give you guys an example, at Lake Lanier when I was doing this a few years ago, the coves I went into at Lake Lanier that did not have submerged timber, the fish were sitting on the bottom. And I could get in like 30 foot of water, take the Dyna-Response, pitch out there, pop it off the bottom, let it go all the way back to the bottom, and when you lift it up on it like that, they'd be there. Now, the coves that had timber in it, the fish would be suspended in those timber tops. So I'd pitch it down there, and I'd count it down to the approximate depth where I felt the tops of the timber were, and I'd just jig it the same way, suspended, you know, over the tops of those timber. And you can even do it vertical. It's like you can pitch it out in front of the boat, or you can drop it straight down vertical and just pop it up like a spoon. But this Dyna-Response, what it does, if you've never seen a blade bait or if you've never used one, it goes through the water the same way like a rattle trap or a lipless crankbait. It vibrates through the water and it feels like a lipless crankbait. It's got a real hard thump on there, and it's head weighted here. If you can see the head on there, so it drops head first with it. And the good thing about this is it comes in a couple different sizes. You can cover a tremendous amount of deep water in a hurry. So if I pull back into the middle of one of those coves like that, I usually fish anywhere between, I'll set it down in 50 to 60 and I'll fish my way into maybe 15 or 20. And so I can cover one cove in maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. So in the course of a day, you can see how many, you know, potential areas that you can fish on there. So anyway, guys, it's good this time of year. It's a really good late winter technique. It's the reason, like I said, the reason it is so good is because those fish that are positioned 2/3 of the way back in the coves are there staging, getting ready to spawn. In another month and a half or so, they're going to move all the way to the back of those coves and spawn. But just get you some, guys. Like I said, Baitworks, link in the description for them. These things are freaking awesome. I usually fish it on anywhere between 12 to 15 pound test Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon. And I usually use it on that Megabass 7-foot 110 special rod, which is sort of a medium action rod, 7 foot, something like that's a good pairing for it. So anyway, give it a try. I think it's going to add another technique to your arsenal, and we'll see you guys next time.